You know what I hate? Taxes. Taxes are the stupidest thing in the world because you don't even really know where this money is going and you assume it's just lining some fat cat's pockets. You've got taxes on purchases. You have taxes on money you spend. You have taxes on money you have in accounts. You have taxes on everything. You own a house. Oh, you own taxes on that house even though you own the house. Oh, you own a car. You owe taxes on that car. Abolish the IRS. But we're not here to talk about that sort of tax today, kiddies. Because I'm not a financial channel, although they make some really good ad revenue. No, I'm a simple video game channel. And of course, as the king of Xbox, I've been seeing something pop up more and more recently online. Something about this Xbox tax, and I'm very confused by this. What is the Xbox tax? What is this new terminology that I've heard? I paid money when I purchased an Xbox. Are we talking about that? No. And many other Xbox YouTubers are talking about it. So the king of Xbox, YouTube, needs to talk about this and figure out what this perceived Xbox tax is, because all of this talk has definitely been spurned on by the Game Awards, and come to some sort of realization whether the Xbox tax is real or not. Now, going over to Twitter, we will see here, or X, whatever you want to call it, lots of talk about the Xbox tax. You'll see some of my friends that I follow on Twitter say some very funny things about the tax. I like this one from BG. Is the Xbox tax in the room right now? But now there's a lot of people that I don't follow basically talking about this tax. One thing that popped up is this video clip saying that, you know, Xbox feels that they're at a disadvantage. This is Major Nelson, who I would like to see as Valor, but basically saying that there's a different yardstick from the different developers, meaning that essentially he's saying that some games are being penalized because of the platform that they are on, or the way these games are distributed. You could see some more people here talking about whether it's real or not, what this is, and really that's what it sort of boils down to. The Xbox tax is something that people feel like Xbox games are graded unfairly, whether they're on something like Game Pass or whatever the reason is. There's a negative stigma around Xbox and Xbox IPs. And if this IP was on another platform, or if this IP was developed by another studio, such as like a first-party Nintendo game or a first-party Sony game, that it would be more well-received by critics. And, you know, upon first inspection, this sounds stupid. Like, this sounds just like a weird sort of copium saying that, you know, the reason our these games on Xbox are good, but they are, you know, they're not being received well by critics because they have a negative bias. That's what it kind of boils down to, a negative bias towards, you know, Xbox games. Like here is a NPC and then a main character. That's not really a great sort of comparison there for Starfield and of course Spider-Man 2. Why wasn't no Hi-Fi Rush or Starfield in the Game of the Year nominations? And a lot of this of course was spurned on from Game of the Year. So let's talk about this at just a basic level, because as someone who's been around this for 10 plus years now, the review process of games, you know, just the internet culture and video game culture in general, do certain franchises have a bias towards them where they can potentially get higher scores? I honestly think yes, to some degree, because everyone has a certain bias within them. Everyone has a preference to what sort of games they like to play. I usually focus on games and genres on this channel that I'm familiar with because I have sort of a bias towards those. And I feel like, you know, since I'm a fan of this genre, since I'm a fan of this franchise, I'm able to look at this game a bit more clearly than something that I'm not super familiar with, or something that, you know, is a newer IP or something like that, because everyone's coming in at the ground level with something like that. Now, do I feel like there is an Xbox tax, which the terminology is really dumb, because why is this a tax? Like, I don't really get that. But some people feel like this Xbox tax is essentially because of games being available on Game Pass, and you're not really having to, you know, put a lot of thought into purchasing this game or anything like that. You're simply pressing a download button. But to me, I feel like that would be a positive about this, because you're not having to spend money on this game. It's already included in your Game Pass subscription. So you spend a couple, you get a couple AAA games off of Game Pass on day one. You've more than met your quota for what the Xbox Game Pass subscription fee is. So if anything, that should lead to potentially higher scores for these games. Now, like I said, I do feel like there are IPs that if you take out the main character or you take out the history of that, then yeah, it's probably not getting as high of a score as it would have if it is a new IP. A game like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic game, but if you take out Link and Zelda and the connection to previous games, is it scoring as high? Is Super Mario Wonder scoring as high if Mario is not the main character? If there is no history of the Mario character, a God of War game, stuff like that is definitely worth talking about. And I feel like, yes, there is a little bit of a boost for those games, but it's an earned boost. There's a reason why Zelda games get a little bit higher than if Link and Zelda weren't in the game. There's a reason why Super Mario games get a little bit higher, even if you take away Super Mario and then he's no longer in the game, because they've built up a pedigree. They've built up a lineage. They've built up a history of this character as having highly rated games. Those games did not get those scores from the get-go because they were bad games and they had this affinity for the character. These games got these high scores because they were top-notch games. And you could say, Xbox does have its games that get good review scores. Games like Forza, which has been a constant factor in the racing game genre. Gears of War was a huge, well-received franchise for Xbox. It was just they kind of did too many of them in the same sort of style. You could even really say that about Halo, because some of the later Halo entries were a bit disappointing. And although Halo Infinite right now, the multiplayer is the best it's ever been, when that multiplayer portion of the game launched, it wasn't good. It was not very good. There was a huge limit of content that made the previous entries in the game sort of dwarf it. And you're starting to see it a bit with other mainline franchises that have had a dip in quality. Look at the Pokemon games. Scarlet and Violet probably scored higher than they should have, but they also scored lower than most mainline Pokemon games do, because at some point in time, you get this sort of disconnect where it's like, okay, what's the problem here? There has to be a reason for this franchise going in a decline, and we can no longer ignore the situation. With Xbox acquiring IPs from other companies and acquiring full studios, it's going to take some time for these games to sort of, meet a certain level of quality. Like, nobody's sitting here saying that the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 campaign is a good campaign, even though there has been great Call of Duty games, because there's been a steady decline in it. And it's not because Xbox owns Activision now. That game is just not a good campaign experience. Is there a bit of a negative stigma towards Xbox because of some missteps and just some games that maybe didn't meet expectations? There probably is. There probably is, but I don't think that there is a general thing where it's automatically, if it's an Xbox game, it's a bad game. Because I feel like a lot of people do, try to cover Xbox objectively. You have people on the internet, you have review critics and stuff like that who are very outspoken, who are either, pro positive or are negative Xbox people. And you kind of got to find those middle ground people. You can't find the people shilling for everything that Xbox does, but you can't find the people that are hating on what Xbox does. I will say, I do feel like that Xbox, when they do something well, they kind of don't get enough credit. And that's something I would like to sort of see, change. And with these upcoming games that we are perceived to be having, with these new titles that are coming out, the future does look pretty solid for these Xbox games. But at the end of the day, the games themselves have to deliver. And if you're hyping up every Xbox thing, even if you think it's mediocre, you're doing a disservice to the brand. And you could say the same thing about Nintendo people. You could say the same thing about PlayStation people. Anyone who overhypes every single thing a company does without getting paid for it is doing a disservice to the brand, because they're not allowing for any sort of criticism of it. And without any criticism of anything, then you get terrible product. You get Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And there's going to be people in the comment section that are like, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it's a great game. It just has issues. Talk about the issues. If a game has issues, it's okay to address those issues. Was Starfield a perfect game? No. There were some issues. I ran into some bugs. I had my save file get sort of messed up at one point in time, and I had to go way back into another save file. Do I think Starfield could have been a Game of the Year nominee? Sure, I do. But I don't think that there is some negative Xbox bias that did not allow it to be in the Game of the Year contention, because objectively speaking, these other games were received better. Plus, at the end of the day, Game of the Year doesn't matter. If Starfield or Hi-Fi Rush is your Game of the Year, what does it matter what someone else's opinion is? Enjoy the game for what it is. So, the Xbox tax. I mean, everyone has biases. Everyone has preferences towards certain things. Is there some widespread conspiracy against Xbox? No. It's just that Xbox has had a lot of missteps within this generation and within the previous generation that people look at it a little bit more harshly. And that's just to be expected. Once Xbox starts delivering on a lot of these promises, which I think they've been doing a better job of, I think the narrative will shift. Let me know what you think of this in the comment section down below, though. Is there an Xbox tax, a negative bias towards Xbox because they're Xbox games? Or do you think that, hey, you know, this is something that Xbox needs to address? And maybe, just maybe, Metacritic doesn't really matter. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. As the king of Xbox, I got to give you the latest Xbox news that's out there. Make sure you hit the subscribe. Oh, God. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.